I need to record this. Okay, I'm going to start that over to record. Welcome, and our mission is to empower women to dramatically improve lives by collectively funding significant grants that make a lasting impact in our community. And that is why you are all here for the grant making portion of what we do. Since our inception in 2001, we have awarded $5 million, over $5 million, to local nonprofits for a total of, after this year's awards, 51 nonprofits of at least $100,000, which is pretty amazing. We are 541 women strong this year, and we range from 17 years old to 80 plus years old. We're from all the different zip codes of our region, and we are actively working to diversify even more so our membership. So how it works. You are here for the first piece of how this all works. We have a very simple model. So women join at $500 or $1,000 level. So that's our full and half membership. Then we pool the monies together into grants of at least $100,000. Then local nonprofits. So potentially the 49 of you on this call with me, submit first letters of intent and then potentially full grant applications into one of our 5 focus areas, which are family, health and wellness, education, culture, and then environment, recreation, and preservation. And then our members come together in committees around those 5 focus areas. They review the applications, perform site visits, financial analysis, and whittle us down to our finalists. And then in September, at our annual award celebration, the finalists present their project. This year, they were pre-recorded, but typically there are live presentations. And typically, in a typical year, our membership votes live at the event for who will be awarded the grants. And then we partner with our grantees in a relatively long-term way, anywhere between a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 3 years. And I like to, before we go on, just tell you a little bit about what I think makes Impact 100 special. And that is that 100% of our member dollars go to the grant pool, which is amazing. We are an all volunteer board, and we have a lovely outsourced administrator, Jen Williams, on the call. But other than that, it's a 24-person leadership team that does all the work. Our members can be as involved or uninvolved as they'd like, meaning that you can just write your check and know that the other members are going to be great stewards of your funds, or you can be president. It runs that gamut. Again, as I said, we have a 100% all volunteer working board, which I really truly believe delivers on our mission of empowering women. It's a great place for women to develop their leadership skills and mentor others in that way. So after my spiel on why I think we're so special, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Thornton, who is our grant chair. She is the leader of all things grant related, and we are so lucky to have her at the helm. Kathy, would you like to take it away?
All right, welcome. We're so glad that you're here, and thank you, Sarah Grace, for kicking things off. This is an exciting time in the life of Impact 100 because it actually kicks off our new grant cycle. Some of you may know that we just kind of finished the old one back in September when we awarded 4 $100,000 grants to some very worthy recipients. So this kicks off our new cycle, and we kick it off by hosting information sessions about our letter of intent and grant process to give people sort of the big picture overview. Because of the life that we're all in right now, we're doing things just a little bit differently. Obviously, we're doing this virtually today. The grant application letter of intent is open, and you will be able to explore it on your own time. And next Thursday morning at 10 a.m., we'll host a Q&A session, primarily for people who either watch the recording of this, or you may have done some exploration and have some questions. So it'll be kind of an open question and answer session. And then on November 10th, we will be hosting a panel of most recent recipients, along with a couple of people who were just applicants to sort of tell you some nitty gritty about their experiences and how that all worked. The letters of intent are then due in December, and we'll talk more about those exact dates. In January, we announce how many dollars we have to award, in this case for 2021, after our membership closes on December 31st. And then in February, those folks who will be invited to submit full grant applications will be notified. They will be due in March, and then the committees come back together to review them. And then in April and May, we do site visits to some potential finalists. And then in June, our finalists are announced, and in September, we award grants. So one of the things that we like to emphasize is it's a really long process. Projects that people consider are usually more long-term, more impact for the longer term rather than short-term kinds of timelines. You can advance, Sarah Grace. So today's session is intended to give you an overview of the process, a little bit of an overview of the content of what is in the LOI and what to expect, and then the process for submitting letters and asking questions that you may need to know. So those are the kinds of things we're going to go over. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Sarah Grace is going to be sort of monitoring that, and we'll hop in either mid-presentation or as we get to the end, or jot down your own questions and ask them at the end of our time here together. So without anything further, there are several things that are really important as you think about whether or not you qualify to submit a letter of intent. So the first and most important thing is you must be a 501c3 or a 509A status from the IRS, and you will be required to upload that letter saying that you do have that particular status. Your application can be for many different kinds of things. We have had applications and recipients for capital expenditures, for projects or programs, for startups, technical assistance, and combinations of all four of those. You will be asked to indicate what you are applying for, but all of those things are acceptable. What we don't accept are grant applications that are for endowments, current operating expenses and programs, partisan activities, things that are already done or will be done before the grant period, individual churches. We have had applications from churches for programs that have more of a social service kind of project, indigent care, subsidies, travel loans, or to individuals. And importantly, funds cannot be re-granted to other nonprofit organizations. You are encouraged to have partners and those kinds of things, but the funds may not be re-granted to other nonprofit organizations. Next slide, thanks. So as you think about the letter of intent, there are several main sections, and I'm not going to read every single line. You can see some of the things that will be required. These are things that would be very easy for you to answer. Just basic information about your organization, the name, your EIN number, your website, contact information. What's really important here is that whoever is the letter of intent contact name, make sure we have that information, phones and emails, as well as the executive director's names, titles, phone numbers, and emails. We had a situation one time where we had to get a hold of people quickly and we needed multiple phone numbers. So please be sure to include those. You'll be asked for your annual operating budget, which we recognize things are a little bit in flux, and we're certainly taking that into consideration, along with your vision and mission statement. So just basic information about who you are as an organization. Sarah Grace mentioned this. We accept applications that serve only these 10 counties. It doesn't mean that you have to serve all 10 counties, but it has to have at least one of them as your service area. So the Kentucky counties are Boone, Campbell, and Kenton. County in Indiana is Dearborn. And then in Ohio, the 6 counties of Adams, Brown, Butler, Claremont, Hamilton, and Warren counties. You must select a focus area for your application. And what happens when you select this focus area is that is the area where the committees review all applications from that particular focus area. We realize that in many cases, you could apply in different focus areas, but it's up to you to select which is the best fit. We're not going to select that for you. You must select that on your application. And there are some descriptions on the website that tell you a little bit more about this if you want to kind of weigh which area you might apply. Culture, education, environment, preservation and recreation, family, or health and wellness. So in describing your project, program, capital expenditure, the first main area that you will have to talk about is a proposal summary. And as a person who has reviewed quite a few grants, this is a really important area because this is the first introduction that your readers will have about what it is you want to do. What is your project or program title? Just a couple of sentences that say, here's what we're going to do, what kind of request it is, and then your total proposed budget for the project. In this particular case, because this is the letter of intent, all project budgets must be $100,000. So after you have completed the summary, you're going to tell us a little bit more about what it is that you want to do. What specific need does this project or program address? You are the best people to tell us. And just as a kind of reminder, someone gave me this feedback this year. Kind of assume that your reader doesn't know too much about what this area is. Obviously, no one can be an expert, certainly not as expert as you are in this. So try to be as specific as possible and assume people don't necessarily know the jargon you know or know what you mean when you say certain things. As you think about this specific need or project or program, do you observe any disparities in the needs with respect to race and ethnicity, gender, ability, disability, or any other marginalized groups? This gives you an opportunity to talk about who you serve, how you serve, and what you've observed about any of that or have data to suggest as you think about your project or program. A second question under the proposal narrative is, how does your project impact that need? What does it do to help to address the need, to ameliorate the need, to overcome it, to help to support the people that you serve through this particular program? Please address how this project supports your mission too, so that you can demonstrate that it is part of what you are called to do as a nonprofit organization. So the integration of your mission with the needs and the program or project that you are proposing. Thirdly, who is the target population? Who are you attempting to serve? How many people do you expect to serve? What do you think the impact will be on those? What are the demographics of the people that you might serve? Again, in terms of race and ethnicity, gender, ability, disability of those you expect to serve. And you will notice on here that there are character limits in each of these. They are fairly generous. And part of the thing to remember with a letter of intent is the readers are trying to discern which programs and projects might be the best opportunities to invite for full grant applications. So this is your chance to sort of kick off your ideas and to see whether or not they resonate with the teams that are reading your applications. And then fourthly, what are the measurable goals for this project or program that you hope to achieve? We recognize that some outcomes sometimes are more difficult to measure, but at the same time, we're looking for some indication of if you implement this project or program, what will you be able to say happened as a result of the work that you have done?
And Kathy, we have a question. Do demographics include poverty levels?
Sure, absolutely. Next, you will be asked to describe how the Impact 100 grant funds would be used. This is in both a narrative form, and it is also in a numbers form. How are you going to spend these monies if you are a recipient? And to the extent possible, we're looking for some degree of specificity. We don't want you to just say, such and such project, $100,000. We want some degree of breakdown about how those monies will be spent for your project. This is what the sort of budget page looks like when you enter it. And so the example here, of course, is don't just list $100,000, but list line items. And the way that you do that, you'll see the line item and the dollar amount, and you see a plus and minus sign over there to the right-hand side. If you click on the plus sign, it will add new lines. A minus sign, of course, would take it around. And again, we want to be sure that your budget totals $100,000. If we get an application and it doesn't, you will be contacted to say it needs to be $100,000. So save yourself and probably us a little bit of extra work by ensuring that your budget does equal $100,000. So the application submission process is really quite easy, we think, we hope. You will go to the Impact 100 website, which is at www.impact100.org. Along the top side, you will see tabs. The first one says Apply for Grants, and you can click on that. In that first area, you will see various sets of resources. They'll talk about eligibility requirements. They'll talk about elements of the proposal, some very general kinds of sources of information. On this page, you will also see some resources from our recent Grants Plus training. If any of you were able to be part of that last Thursday, there is a recording of that presentation on creating proposals during this time of our new normal, preparing proposals in times of crisis. So there's both the recording of that presentation as well as the PowerPoint from that PDF of the PowerPoint from that presentation. There will also be some other resources there that you can take a look at. There will be an Apply Now button that will also be under the Apply for Grants, and it says to apply for the 2020-2021 letter of intent. It's a little uncertain which date you should put on. Clearly, it's still 2020, and that's the time at which we're applying, and applications will be due in December, but it is for the 2021 grant cycle. So you could just click on that link. You can also go to the section that says the application process, and there you'll see the tabs for the LOI and later the grant. You can go in the LOI tab, and there's also a button there to click for the letter of intent online submission form. One of the things that is very workable as you think about this application is you can begin working on your application, and assuming you're not going to finish it in one sitting, you can click the button that says Save and Continue Later. If you click Save and Continue, you will get a prompt that says enter an email address. You will enter your email address there, and you will get an email with a link. When you come back to continue to work on your letter of intent, you will use the link that is sent to you in that email, and you will not lose any of your work, and you will be able to continue on your application. So this is what the sort of email you'll get if you hit Save and Continue, and you see the white bar space where it says email address. That's where you will put your email, and then you will click Send Link. So you enter your email, click Send Link, and you will get a confirmation that says, thanks for saving and continuing, and here is the link to use to return to your application. When you are finished with your letter of intent and you're ready to submit, you simply click the Submit button. Do not submit until you're ready, because once you have completed it, it's sort of gone. A confirmation email will be sent to the email addresses that have been submitted that it is in fact been submitted. If you submit it before the deadline and you decide you need to make some changes, you would simply submit another one, and it would replace the one that you had sent earlier. So all of your online letters of intent must be received by Friday, December 11th, 2020 at noon. That's Friday, December 11th, 2020 at noon. We will accept your most recently submitted version, and we rely on the electronic date stamp, timestamp, to ensure that you got them in on time. We more than encourage you. We highly encourage you to not wait till the last hour to submit. We understand that that's often the case, but we really highly encourage you to make sure there are no technical issues on your end that may cause some kind of delay. If they're on our end, obviously we would alert you and make those concessions, but we all know about technology. So we really encourage you to not wait till the very last minute to submit your letter of intent. Again, due on Friday, December 11th, 2020 at noon. So here is the website, and you'll get a follow-up email from today's presentation along with the link to the recording and the actual link to apply. But this is the place to go, impact100.org, apply for grants. Here are just a couple of tips to think about and to look for as you think about writing your letter of intent. Several years ago, we had gotten requests from nonprofits to sort of do some kind of coaching, I guess, as I would say, how can I make mine better? How can we do things to move our projects along? And as a volunteer organization whose members change, whose committees change, we all take an oath not to coach. We pride ourselves on trying to keep a level playing field so that all applicants have the same chances to potentially be a viable grant recipient. But we did create something we call the viability checklist, and we have found that it is most useful in being a kind of checklist for you to use as you do your grant application. And it is on the website in the grant section, and it lists some things to think about to ensure that your application has the possibility of moving forward. Some of them are structural, like making sure you're a 501c3, and some of them are more programmatic and in nature. Secondly, on the website, also under Apply for Grants, there is a drop down that says Frequently Asked Questions. And this is another place that you can explore to see some of the questions that people have asked in the past and maybe something that you can do. And it looks like Sarah Grace just put it in the chat. Thank you, Sarah Grace, for you to explore. Thirdly, operating costs. While we do not fund operating costs for things that you are already doing with certain populations in certain places, we will fund operating costs that are associated with expanding a program, with improving a program, with doing it in a new place or in a new way, or just to start something new. We recognize that you always need people. We need people to do the work, and there are operating costs associated with. So with that kind of situation, we will fund operating costs. Fourthly, collaboration. We welcome and encourage you to collaborate with other nonprofit partners. Again, the only caveat is that you may not re-grant, if you're a recipient, you may not re-grant your dollars to another entity. You can pay someone else in if they're doing part of the work, that kind of idea, but you may not re-grant them for them to do something with them as it relates to granting someone else those grant dollars. We do encourage you that you might want to complete your letter of intent offline by drafting a Word document and then doing some copy paste. That if you're worried about losing your work, which I always was, you can do that on the website. Again, there is a PDF of the LOI questions So you can download that and use that as a, as a guide. It is a PDF, so you can't write on the document, but you can look at the questions and draft your responses there, and then do a cut and paste into the application. So that's a tip that some people have shared, that that's a really good way to think about approaching the letter of intent. So just to sort of give you another sense of what the whole cycle looks like, as I just mentioned, that letter of intent, you should be able to repeat it now. If we were in the same room, we would repeat it, is Friday, December 11th, 2020 at noon. Late January, the membership dollars are announced about how many grants we will be able to award in 2021. Late February, the invitations will be extended to those nonprofits submitting letters of intent, who will be invited to submit full grant applications. And on March the 4th, we'll have a training session similar to this one on completing a full grant application for those people who will be moving forward. And grant applications will be due at noon on Friday, March 19th. So late February notice, they will be due Friday, March 19th at noon. And they will be an expansion of your letter of intent. More details about the content, the program, who you are, more financial information, that sort of thing. Usually in late April, May, we do site visits. These are opportunities. In normal times, we come to your site and give you an opportunity to talk about what it is you want to do, to talk a little bit more about your organization, to answer questions that may have arisen from the reading of your written applications, and to kind of just showcase the work that you do. And then in June, we name finalists for 2021. And again, in September is when we award grants. So again, just the recognition that it's a really long cycle. And part of that just has to do with the nature of getting groups of people together over long periods of time who are volunteers, and doing a really good job of reading your applications, giving each one of them time, because we value your time and your consideration. So we want to give due to a good review of your applications. So we're trying something a little new. I mentioned this earlier. So rather than doing this full presentation again, we will record it, make it available to people. And next Thursday, we will have a question and answer session. So we'll do a very brief overview and then open for questions that you may have. You may submit them ahead of time if you wish to grants@impact100.org, or you can wait and just bring them up on that particular day. It's just a chance to have a little bit of a dialogue. Maybe between now and then, you can take a look at the application a little bit more, maybe look at the frequently asked questions and see what kind of questions you might come up with. And again, if you're interested in that, you can register on the website under impact100.org/events.
And I'm going to actually ask you a quick question, Kathy, that I got privately on the chat. Can you kind of elaborate on focus areas and why we are structured in terms of focus areas for those joining us today?
I can tell you what I know. When Impact 100 was started in Cincinnati in 2001 by Wendy Steele, and that year they awarded one grant of $100,000. They set up focus areas in these areas to try to represent, I guess, sort of some of the major categories of the work of the nonprofits in our community to improve lives and make a difference in our community. So the idea of culture, and again, as I said earlier, many of the things that you as nonprofits do overlap. So you could have a project that involves something that is cultural, like dance or music or videography, for example, but it also might involve education of certain certain groups of people or students. And again, that application could come under culture or it could come under education, and that would be up to you. The environment, recreation, and preservation obviously has to do with those things that involve nature and the outdoors, and environmental preservation, and so forth. And then family, education, health and wellness, again, are those areas that the nonprofits take a look at. And part of the reason for having focus groups it has to do with trying to compare project proposals on kind of an equal footing. So it would be harder, for example, to compare a health and wellness application to one in culture, because the content of what they might be doing would be perhaps very different. So again, in order to try to keep things more level, we're trying to do comparisons within those focus areas of the projects or proposals that might have the best opportunity to make a difference and make an impact.
Thank you.
Again, if you have other questions, you can send them to grants@impact100. Jen, our administrator at administration@impact100.org, also knows a whole lot of stuff about the process and questions. Or again, you can take a look at our frequently asked questions that are on the website. As I mentioned earlier, the nonprofit panel, which is comprised of four nonprofits who have recently been awarded Impact 100 grants and or were applicants but were finalists but did not receive a grant. Those panelists, that panel will be at 9:30 on November the 10th. And again, you can register at impact100.org/events. And each of these folks will be interviewed, and you will again have opportunities to ask them questions about their experience or their helpful hints, or sometimes it's the real skinny, I guess.
And I would really urge anybody who wants to consider applying to come to this, because as Kathy mentioned, the board takes an oath that we will not coach, and we take it very seriously. And so if you have questions that individual members have to bounce, you can ask those to the nonprofit panelists, and typically they are more than happy to share their experience with you.
So one of the things we always like to encourage, we know that you are here because you're interested in learning more about the grant process and the letter of intent. But we're always looking to spread the word about Impact 100. The more folks we have join us on the journey, the more funds that we have to support our fantastic nonprofit community. If you know anyone who might be interested in being a sponsor, as Sarah Grace said, 100% of our member dollars go to the grant pool. And so we're always constantly in search of ways to help to sponsor Impact 100, to help with operating costs and the things that are outside of the realm of the grants that we award. And if you are so inclined, you can certainly join us as well. Actually, join us for Impact 2021. 2020 is almost over. And we do have a membership of 110%, which is an extra $100 to help defray some of those costs. So if you have any connections, interest yourself, please feel free to share it with us, and we would welcome anyone to join or be part of what we're doing. So I have not looked. So have we answered all the questions in the chat? Are there any other questions that people have?
I answered a quick question about multi-year support. Could you kind of go into that a little bit? What's our minimum and maximum?
Sure. So the grants are awarded in September, and first checks are not delivered until December at Giving Tuesday. And between September and December, we work on contracts for the milestones for receiving your grant funds. Our requirements are that you must take at least 2 payments. You may take more, but it has to be at least 2 payments. And you can spend, based on your agreement, all of the funds in the first year, or they can be used for up to 3 years. And the funds must be expended by the end of 3 years. So how those funds get distributed are part of your grant agreement that is worked out collaboratively between Impact 100 and you as the nonprofit recipient.
And I don't think there were any more in the chat that we want to go into, but please, anybody on the call, feel free to unmute and ask questions, or put them in the chat if you have anything that any burning questions as well.
I was just wondering what the average number of times an organization applies before they are given a grant.
I am not aware of any averages. I will tell you that there are people who apply and get it the first time. There are people who apply several different times, sort of learning something in the process. There are variables each year that have to do with, who else is in the grant pool, what people are proposing, the grant readers that are part of each individual focus area committee that reviews the grants in each of the focused areas. So I don't think we have any data on the average amount. I would certainly say, I know that I have been part of some that they are the first time, sometimes the second time, sometimes the third time. The other thing is, if you are a grant recipient, you may not apply again for 3 years.
And yeah, we don't have any data, but I think last year's panel, one of the people on the nonprofit panel, they had applied 3 years. So the first year, I don't think they made it through like LOI, and then the next year they made it to a finalist, and then they reapplied, but they didn't receive a grant. And then the final year, they just kept honing it and really taking, just not taking our advice, but looking, kind of visiting their whole story and impact.
Right. And I would encourage you, if you were not part of the Grants Plus session last week, to go on and look at either their slides or preferably their recording. They shared a lot of great information about how do you think about your proposal during these crazy times that we have? How do you tell your story? How do you use data? How do you think about things like diversity and equity and inclusion, those kinds of things. So, and there is a worksheet also on the website on crafting your core compelling idea, meaning the main idea of what it is you're trying to communicate clearly. And again, I can't emphasize enough how important it is for you to try to communicate as clearly as possible. Maybe have somebody who knows nothing about your business read it and see if they know what it is you're asking, how specifically you're asking, because many of the people that read your application, they're not experts in your field. So it's really important for you to be really as clear as possible in communicating your message.
Yep, it was actually very helpful last week, and just thanks for that answer now. Thanks.
I've got a question. So if somebody collaborates with another group, the assumption is that they also need to be a 501c3. But what if the parent organization holds a 501c3 and they're not local? Do we have any?
I think that the organization who does the finances does not have to be local. I think we had one of those last year where they were actually, I don't know, in Lexington or somewhere like that, but that the group implementing the grant has to be serving one of the 10 counties that we require.
Great. And also I put in the chat see our impact page on the website, all of our 51 projects are posted there. So you can go through and see what has been funded in the past. Again, just a caution that our membership does change every year. So what has happened in the past may not be funded in the future, but it is a great way to see what our membership is funded. So we've got another question. Can you retroactively use funds? For example, if the first check is given to a nonprofit in December 2021, can you use the money to cover expenses in September of 2021?
Now, the answer to that is no. The first checks will be delivered in December of 2021, and it is to implement projects going forward, not backward.
Kathy, I'm going to say that I think you did an incredible job answering all the questions. So,
well, and as I said, if anybody has other questions, you know, I don't know about you, but for me, it's always a little bit to take all these things in at one time and you think of things later. So feel free to send some questions to grants@impact100.org or to administrator@impact100.org, and we'll try to cover those next week in our Q&A session. And, you know, we're just delighted that you were here and had the opportunity to think about where your nonprofit is at this particular time, and hopefully see a path forward. If this is the right time for you to apply to Impact 100, we would welcome your application, and we're grateful for all the things that you do for our community. Thanks for being here.
You're here. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Great dreary day.